Okay then. This is for the second year politics students. Don't ask me about the exams, what's happening, because I got no idea. I've done. This is basically the lesson for what would have been Thursday afternoon for the class I have on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. What I will do, I might do it this afternoon, or I might do it over the weekend. The next one I'll do for both classes, and that's about the factions and divisions within the Republican Party. They're a bit big and a bit complicated, so I'm partly thinking I might wait to see what the government says that we should do first. But anyway, as it's not very nice outside, I might do it this afternoon. Anyhow, so this is for the class I would have had Thursday afternoon essentially. Again, if you missed the lesson from the other, if you missed this lesson from the other class, which would have been the Wednesday lesson, then obviously take notes on whatever else. So basically what we did last lesson was that we looked at party systems and we did the comparative work on party systems, how both countries have two parties, there's different reasons for that, or there's similar reasons for that. And what we're looking at here today now is going to be just finishing off the Democrats basically and introducing the Republicans. And I can't remember whether I should do this for homework or whether I was going to do it in class, but either way, there's this work on who supports the Democrat Party and why. So can you fill that in and then press pause and fill that in for me, please. And if you have done it, then carry on playing because I'll then go through it. So if you haven't done it, if you go in the Bennett book, I can't remember what page it's on the top of my head, but it's in the election section. Fill that bit in and then listen to me afterwards, kind of going over some of the key features and boring you slightly. Okay then, so just to go over some of those key features then. So the different groups who support the Democrats, I suppose that the more tricky bit is the why as opposed to the how, I suppose. So in terms of ethnic minorities, the black people are the biggest group. They consistently vote for the Democrats, usually over 85% of the vote or higher for the Democrats. Obama got 98%, I think, something like that. And that's been the case really since the mid-60s onwards, and that's a massive overwhelming support by one ethnic group for one particular party. The reasons for this, they are varied. One argument is it goes back to civil rights and how Martin Luther King supported JFK and then Lyndon Johnson, and so there's that historic reason. I don't think that's particularly important these days because I think most people have kind of forgotten that era, especially younger voters. Another reason is because black people tend to be the poorest in society, and the Democrats seem to have policies that most support poorer groups, things like minimum wage, which they really kind of encourage. Things like Obamacare and other social welfare programs, which again, black people tend to take up. The Democrats tend to support things like affirmative action more than Republicans, and again, this is seen to benefit African Americans in particular. There's issues like most black politicians in America tend to be on the Democrat side. There are some Republicans, but most are Democrat. Obviously, there's Obama of fairly recent past, but there are quite a few number of the senators, for example, who are black tend to be Democrat. So for all these reasons, black people tend to vote Democrat. Other minorities do as well. So, for example, the Hispanic population. Now, they used to be more 50-50 with the Republicans, but they've swung in behind the Democrats, especially since 2008. Immigration seems to be quite a significant reason behind this. And again, just like the African American population, they tend to be the poorer in society. They tend to benefit more from policies like minimum wage, affirmative action, etc., which might suggest their support that way. Because culturally, you could say they're more conservative, and therefore, I think it was Ronald Reagan who said they're Republicans, but they don't know it yet, or something. And also regarding Hispanics, of course, the Republican Party, you might argue, has been quite hostile to them and their interests, building walls and all the rest of it. Although rather oddly, there was a slight increase in support for Trump among Hispanics in 2016, then again to Romney in 2012. Asian Americans as well, they tend to support the Democrats. Again, they've been a shift over as well. The Asian Americans tend to be much wealthier than other ethnic minorities on the whole. They tend as well to be more, it depends which Asian American I suppose you're speaking to, but that's a general rule. But they do, again, I think it's that kind of, that more pro-immigration policy of the Democrats, which might be the main reason. Regarding religion, which is on here, Democrats tend to get most of their support from those who are either non-religious, never attend church, don't go to Christian church but might go to a mosque or something, or they tend to get support as well for those who might only go to church like once a week or once a month or just an occasional visitation. The Democrats, as well in terms of religion, get a lot of support from the Jewish population of America, and again, that's consistently quite high amongst the Jewish population. And again, reasons for this, reasons for the non-religious are probably down to things like, well, religious people tend to identify themselves as Republican, and so if you're non-religious, it's kind of the opposite, isn't it? And of course, the religious people tend to support things like abortion limitation and all these sorts of things, which again, many of the secular non-religious people tend to think abortion should be legalised. Regarding the Jewish community, the reasons are a bit more complicated. I suspect some of it is down to immigration and the fact when they first came to America, many Jewish people were quite poor and therefore associate themselves historically with the Democrat Party as supporting kind of the poorer communities. And the fact that Democrats seem to be ones who want to promote and extend people's rights, which again are seen as being more Jewish favoured. It might seem a bit strange because in many ways you could say the Republicans have been stronger supporters of Israel. Just think about Trump moving the embassy to Jerusalem, much to the pleasure of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. So whether that's going to change or not, I don't know. That's something to watch out for. Okay, gay and lesbian people, again, overwhelmingly tend to support the Democrat Party. Again, this is largely because the Republicans are quite hostile to many in this community because it goes against the religious beliefs of many Republicans. The Democrat Party, as he's been more secular. Gay and lesbian people tend to live in towns and cities as well, which tend to, well, they're not all obviously, which tend to be more cosmopolitan, which are more kind of Democrat supporting. In terms of age groups, the Democrat Party tend to get supporters from the younger age group limit. Again, it's a bit like the UK Labour Party, isn't it? People who are younger tend to be more liberally minded, more progressive. Education level, the Democrats, they used to get the white working class vote, again a bit like Labour, the heavy industry, the clunk and the clanks, if you like, the unionised people. But again, this has been changing, and Donald Trump, as we know, gained a majority in many states of this white working class vote. Democrats tend to be fairly well educated, so you tend to have either the working class vote who are not well educated, who reduced down a bit last time round, or you get the those with good degrees and stuff tend to vote for the Democrats as well. In terms of wealth, again, you used to get the lower end, that white working class vote in particular, and even now, obviously, you have the poorer black community as well tend to vote Democrat. I suppose the Democrats really get the lower end and the middle end of wealth, and they get a very top end as well. Interestingly, the Republicans tend to get more like your bosses and your middle class kind of vote traditionally. Again, there have been some changes under Trump. Urban, rural, urban areas tend to overwhelmingly be Democrats. Big towns and cities, small town America, rural America is much more Republican, and again that's probably due to the United being quite cosmopolitan, more young people in big towns and cities, etc., etc. And in terms of geography, we should already know this when we did the Electoral College, but basically the Democrat vote tends to be in the northeast. Get that right, Paul? Yeah, near the northeast, so Maine, New Hampshire, New York, that kind of area. They have filtered down a bit further south on the East Coast down to Virginia. They also get support on the other side of America, so California, Washington, and Oregon, which are on the western coast of America. And they have a bit of a stronghold in areas like New Mexico, and increasingly Colorado. These cut largely down, I suspect, the Hispanic population down there. So they're the main things about voting and voting areas. Now, in terms of ideas and policies of the parties of the Republicans, again, there's a table in your book, in your textbook. I think it's on page 301, if memory serves me right. So can you fill that in, please, and press pause, and then I'll very quickly go over them when you've done that. Okay then. So to go over it very very quickly, the Republican. I'll do Republican then Conservative. Again, this would be a gift of a question if they asked you to compare the policies of the two parties for similarities or for differences. So, for social liberalism, this is things like gay rights and stuff, the Republican Party generally are quite hostile to these ideas due to their religious kind of beliefs of many in the party. Abortion rights, which they're very hostile to as well. Again, not every single Republican, but a large number of them. This contrasts heavily to the Conservative Party in the UK. As we know, David Cameron legalised gay marriage in the UK, which is something which Republicans would be against. David Cameron as well is quite, well, not different. Conservatives in general in the UK are much more liberal about abortion rights, etc., etc. So there's a big difference there between the two parties. On environmental issues, again, there's a growing difference as well. So under Trump, for example, the Republicans, I think he's denied climate change, hasn't he, if I remember correctly. He's certainly, though, cut down Obama's regulations about pollution, for example. So Obama put in all these regulations for the EPA, the Environment Protection Agency, saying you can't dump toxic waste into rivers and all the rest of it. These have been reversed by Donald Trump, by and large. And of course, Donald Trump walked out or whatever from the Paris Climate Change Agreement as well, which America didn't sign up to as a consequence. The UK Conservative Party, in contrast, has signed up to the Paris Climate Change Agreement. They have said they want Britain to be carbon neutral by, is it 2050? I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. It's something like that. And they are much more kind of pro-environment in the UK. So again, there's a big difference there between the two parties. Although interestingly, I think both parties, you might just need to double check this for the Conservatives, but I'm pretty sure that both parties do support fracking if you want an area of similarity regarding energy and the environment. But just double check that. I'm sure Max will know. Economic intervention. Again, both parties agree that the state should have less of a role in the economy. That said, the Republicans kind of go far further with this than the UK Conservative Party. So the Republicans, they support tax cuts, which again, so does the UK Conservative Party. So they both want to cut corporation tax, and in fact, Trump's tax cuts, some of them were to do with that issue. They both kind of support the existence of the minimum wage because they're already in place, although the UK Conservative Party are much more in favour of increasing it to this national living wage, whereas Republicans in America are less keen on doing anything like that. I suppose with this COVID-19 doodad, hence why I did it this way around, I suppose you could say that in this current state of emergency that both parties have actually intervened quite heavily in the economy with great big stimulus packages. So you could, in an essay, if it did pop up, if there was, let's assume there's an exam, that is, you could say there's a similarity there. Now they both had these big stimulus packages, both quite keen to maintain business growth, aren't they? Regarding healthcare, the Republican Party are hostile to Obamacare. Trump wanted to repeal and replace it, and his replacement was like a much more watered down version of Obamacare. The Conservative Party in the UK, they do support the state system, so there's a great big difference there. The Republicans support the private insurance model for healthcare. The UK Conservatives support the NHS, which is a state provided universal healthcare coverage. So there's a great big difference there between the two. Regarding taxation, both parties believe in lower taxation. Trump, for example, did the tax cuts, didn't he, a couple of years ago? The Conservatives said they'd like to reduce taxation as well, and we know from previous governments that they have reduced taxation. Be interested to see what Johnson does post the current crisis. And we've already mentioned about corporation tax, which both parties seem to want to reduce. Regarding welfare, again, you could say that both parties agree that generous welfare can create a dependency on the state and therefore isn't particularly beneficial. So it isn't particularly beneficial. You could say that both parties, if you like, have been more hostile to welfare. So, for example, a lot of the criticism of the UK Conservative Party around universal credit, which is seen as kind of reducing the amount of welfare, making it more unpleasant, if you like, to get welfare. And this thing about the bedroom tax as well. and the US Republican Party as well. They tend to be quite hostile about extending welfare any more than it currently is. And in America, it is much more limited than it is in the UK. So again, both parties agree that welfare and dependency on welfare is a bad thing. Both parties have been willing to cut it back, or certainly have been hostile to extending welfare programs. Regarding guns, there was quite a big difference here, I think, anyway. The Republican Party are very much in favour of guns and people having guns. They're very much against a lot of restrictions. The UK Conservative Party has, generally speaking, been supportive of gun restrictions. There's been no attempts, for example, to reverse the gun control laws which Labour introduced following the Dunblane massacre back in 1995, or whatever it was. And in terms of immigration, again, you could say that both parties are fairly hostile, or they're not so keen on immigration. Think about Theresa May was accused, wasn't she, of having this hostile environment towards new immigrants, for example. The US Republican Party, famously under Trump has been quite anti-immigration, especially Hispanic immigration, building walls and all the rest of it. So you could say there's a bit of an agreement there, although I don't think the UK Conservative Party will support building, well, we've got a C, so we can't do, you know what I mean? So I don't think they go as far as the US Republican Party. So the two questions underneath are asking you, this was a 12 mark, you might ask what are explain the main similarities and policies between Republicans and Conservatives, and the main differences. So hopefully from what I've just bored you on and what you just read, you should be able to think of 3 similarities and 3 differences. And then there's another little question at the bottom I put in here. Who would you argue? Would you argue the Conservatives have more in common with Republicans or Democrats? Okay, which is just to make you think a little bit about that. So that is basically what we were going to do on Thursday. And the next lesson on Monday was going to be about factions and the different divisions within the Republican Party. So I plan to do that kind of this weekend on Monday. I'll do that kind of PowerPoint and I'll send it out to you, and we'll have a chat about those divisions.